So my testimony doesn't include what some might consider a radical conversion element. I was raised in a loving Christian home, and we were very active in our church. I really don't remember a time when I didn't know of or love Jesus, just like I don't remember a time when we weren't in church when the doors were open. But I do remember making the official decision to become a Christian at a church camp when I was about 8 years old. And I surrendered to him because his love compelled me, and because I believed everything, the truth of everything that I had been learning my whole life. So what my testimony does include, however, are several radical interventions by the Lord where he brought revival and revelation to my heart. And it was those defining moments that have really shaped me and molded me for who I am today. The summer before high school, also at a church camp, the Lord gripped my heart about surrendering my future to him. So at 14, I had big plans for my life. I planned to go to a big college out of state. I was considering law school. My mom was an MK, or a missionary's kid, and she grew up out of the country on a mission field. And though I'm thankful for my Christian heritage, my mom's experience was not great. The last thing I was interested in was in following in my parents' or my grandparents' footsteps and going into ministry. I was especially not interested in going to Bible college. I was determined to do my own thing. During that week at family camp, though, in the unbearable heat of mid-August, the Lord used several encounters and situations to move on my heart. And I felt compelled to surrender my life completely to do his will, whatever that looked like. What happened when I got up from that ancient wooden altar at camp was the very definition of a 180-degree turn. Immediately, my heart changed about ministry, it changed about Bible college, it changed about all the plans that I had made for myself. I had a new vision, a new drive, and my heart was completely transformed. Until that point, I've been living for me and expecting God to just bless my efforts and bless my plans. But now I had real purpose, and I had a godly desire to follow him wherever he was going to lead me. It was something I had never felt before. It was a new depth for me, something in my relationship with the Lord I had never felt. At that fall, I went to high school, and all throughout high school, I was just pushing and pushing and pushing to get through high school so I could get to Bible college and to pursue ministry. I was hyper-focused and immersed myself and volunteered for every kind of ministry in the church that would take me as a teenager. When I got to college is when I truly fell into my element, though. I took advantage of every opportunity, every open door. I not only studied the Word and theology, but learned what it truly meant to live a life of service. I pursued using my gifts to the best of my ability and to the best of my understanding of how God created me. For the 5 years that I was in college, I was running full speed ahead into my destiny. So you probably feel a but coming on, or a however. This is the point in my story where I can really relate to other people's testimonies of conversion. There comes a point in a person's life when they realize the true depth of their weakness and their indisputable need for God. In my final semester in college, after almost 8 years total of just running full speed ahead, I hit a wall. I had a plan, I had the training, I had offers for ministry positions, but all of a sudden it was almost time for me to leave my comfy little Christian bubble and launch into the real world, and I realized that it looked nothing like I thought I would. My life looked nothing like I thought it would at this point. I made up a lot of excuses about student loans and not really being sure about where I should go, but really what it boiled down to was fear. And even more to the point, I had not expected to be at this point in my life and still be single. What I still refer to as the relationship ended a couple of months before graduation, and I was devastated. I was planning on going to a mission field, and I had no grit for doing it alone. Surely that wasn't God's plan. Surely I needed to step back and reassess and wait. I was standing on the precipice of what I had been preparing to do for over 8 years, and it was paralyzing. It was terrifying. At the same time, during this time, I was actually singing professionally with a couple of college buddies and just traveling to local churches and doing some recording. It was a lot of fun, and that seemed a lot more doable to me. It was ministry, right? So I took a giant step back from what I was sure for years that God was calling me to do. And I settled. I settled for something I felt more comfortable with and better equipped in the moment to do. I could actually spend a couple of hours talking about the consequences that making that one choice back in 1997 brought in my life. But since we only have 10 minutes, let me sum up. That one choice started a snowball effect that affected my life, my spiritual life, for over 5 years. Once I compromised my calling and my convictions, I started compromising in other areas of my life. Shame creeped into my heart. I started believing the lies of the enemy about my self-worth. I lost my confidence, and that just continued to spur me to make selfish choices and wrong choices. I faced and gave in to temptations that had never even tempted me before. I didn't curse God or sever my relationship with him by choosing a different path, but over time I found myself on a slippery slope, sliding further and further away from him and for what he created me to be. I was still going through the motions, protecting my reputation in my church circles and the best that I could, but there was literally no connection or intimacy with the Lord in my life at this point. And I was paying for those consequential choices financially, spiritually, emotionally. I remember one point in my life, I'd spent so many years, music has been such a huge part of my life since I was 5 years old. And I was constantly singing in groups and in choirs and at churches and weddings and all these things. And I remember in the middle of this time, there was about a year to 18 months that I didn't sing a note. It was literally the dark night of the soul for me. I felt so isolated and alone. I found myself in a place so void of his presence that I realized I couldn't even in good conscience say grace over a meal when I was sitting down to eat with my family. I didn't believe that he would hear it. I didn't believe I was worthy of speaking to him. I didn't like who I had become. How could he possibly like me? And how could he hear me? I had compromised almost everything I had once held dear and had ruined his plans for my life and missed the boat and sacrificed the impact I could have had on the kingdom and all of these things. But God, through a series of events and people and a new church family, and I'm convinced the prayers of my mother, even though she really didn't know what was going on, the Lord brought me back around full circle. My relationship with him was restored. The hope of his calling was restored. He put me back in the path of service for the kingdom. It was the beginning of a whole new adventure with Jesus that has been so full of revelation and heart transformation. And again, another 2-hour conversation. But looking back and reflecting on the journey that I've been on this point, I have learned many things. One of those things is regarding fear. He taught me that he does not call the qualified, he qualifies the called. I was afraid of going into ministry alone, and then later afraid that I was no longer worthy or capable of fulfilling the purpose that he was asking me to, the things that he was asking me to do. I look back and I realize so many times in my life, I had taken the small pieces of revelation that God had given me about my purpose, tucked them like a football under my arm, and just ran for the goal. I had spent a lot of time in my life trying to make divine things happen in my own strength and by my own understanding. But not only am I not remotely alone, I am not expected to do things in my own strength. I learned that this is his design, so that he will receive the glory for every accomplishment, and that he is always by my side. Secondly, another thing I learned, he taught me that he is always as close as a whisper. I felt distance because I had walked away, not because he had left me or left my side. All I had to do was speak his name, and he was there. He had always been relentlessly pursuing me and had not for one moment stopped loving me or desiring for me to draw near to him. When I truly began to understand his love for me, I began to understand that obedience and service were to be a response of my love for him. Serving God was never meant to be a way to try and pay him back for the sacrifice that he had made on the cross. I mean, such a thing is impossible, but it's supposed to be a loving response to that reality. Today, I am in awe of how he chooses to partner with me in kingdom work. He empowers me to do what he calls me to do, and then I'm rewarded beyond measure for walking in it. The kingdom economy is not of this world, and it is way more than I deserve. He is faithful when I'm not. He honors his word when I do not. He loves me as I am, even in my weakness. I shared a piece of my testimony with the middle schoolers last month and felt like this one verse really summed up the cry of my heart. Psalms 116, 1 and 2 says, I love the Lord because he has heard my voice and my supplication. Because he has inclined his ear to me, therefore I will call upon him as long as I live. He loves me, he sees me, and he hears me. And for those things, I'm eternally grateful.